Hi everyone, I'm Nat, and I'm the head of community at Exceptional Individuals. I'm going to be talking mainly as if you are all dyslexic. First of all, you just need to focus. I am sick for people telling me I need to focus. It's part of how our brains work. You're always in school being told you just need to apply yourself more. Stop telling dyslexics that they need to focus. My first question, what did you get told to try harder at? Either at school or at the workplace? Is there something which you were doing your absolute best as it is, but it never seemed good enough for a neurotypical person, maybe with a lack of understanding? Sometimes unintentionally, you can make someone feel that they're not good enough or lower their self-esteem. I know with spelling, people say, oh, if you just try hard enough, you'll do it. They say it in a motivating way with some inspirational music in the background or like a TED talk playing over the top. It doesn't help. We've got schoolwork, math, concentration, spelling, proofreading, keeping up with note-taking, reading out loud, read quicker, particularly in group work, typing and spelling, attendance. These are all really great suggestions, and sadly I can resonate with all of them. When you're talking to a dyslexic, telling them to focus isn't going to make them focus any harder. Maybe we can find another way around it. It's normally because when we're trying to tell someone to focus, we're telling them to learn in a way which is typical to the mass population. Because their brains do not think that way, basically telling a fish to climb a tree, being generally quicker at things, if this counts. Yeah, absolutely. The next one is, other people do not need to know about your dyslexia. Many people say, interview, you do not have to talk about it. This isn't a secret. I'm just dyslexic. I'm proud of it. If people want to discriminate against me, they're going to do it anyway. But the thing about dyslexia is it's that elephant in the room. It's invisible, but it's going to come out sooner or later. Whether or not you should tell your employer at the interview stage, it's up to you. Giving someone the choice to make that decision, they'll end up resenting you if they keep it to themselves and they struggle later and feel they could have had support had they have felt empowered to talk about it. What do people think when you tell them you have dyslexia? The first one is, it means I can't read. People just assume you are illiterate. Yet 1% of people who are dyslexic are illiterate. The vast majority of us can read. I have unique strengths. Oh, not many people assume that the first time you meet them. I have lower intelligence. Yeah, people always assume you're, as a result, most of us were in the bottom sets in school. We've got some stuff going on up there. Dyslexia and intelligence aren't the same things. I'm a good problem solver. It's like saying every autistic is Rayman. These negative stereotypes can also be positive. Most of you found it meant you couldn't read or you have low intelligence. And even 2021, like 100 years since dyslexia has been in conversation, we are still referring to it as a debilitating disability which lowers your potential prospects in life. It doesn't have to be that. You can acknowledge the challenges without condemning it at the same time. Maybe you should think about alternative jobs when reading. If you're struggling, people say, have you thought of an apprenticeship? Or university isn't for everyone, or in job, maybe you don't want to be a director or a manager. There's nothing wrong with an entry-level job. I am not dissing any of those positions, but just because I'm dyslexic doesn't mean I should be automatically pigeonholed into a job which doesn't reach my full potential. When I was in school, anyone who was in the bottom sets, they weren't allowed to study English literature. And as I was dyslexic, I was in the bottom sets. They made every single underachiever go and study bricklaying. I'm not a bricklayer. These arms aren't doing any brick, yet they forced us to do it. And already they set our expectations. They lowered the bar. They told us what we can and cannot be. I refused to do that. Didn't attend school. I'm a troublemaker, an underachiever, a bricklayer. And I didn't want to be any of those things. Always think, when you're talking to someone dyslexia, yes, they are going to struggle. Yes, they are going to find things more difficult than the average Joe. But that doesn't mean they have to redirect. If they've got their goal on astronaut, let them be an astronaut. We do have dyslexics who are in NASA. We do have people with dyslexia who have gone on to be doctors and lawyers. We actually support a lot of lawyers. There's a group of lawyers who come together who are all dyslexic. It doesn't have to be a limiting factor. My question to you is, have you ever been told to aim lower due to your dyslexia? Yes, by teachers. Maybe college isn't for you. Your family. You know what? Not everyone's going to be a manager or a doctor. Maybe you're self-deprecating. You're continuously telling yourself, this isn't for you. You're going to struggle. It's not worth the hassle. The students I counselled, we're normally the people who lower expectations. It was something that we learn. We aren't born thinking we're less good or less intelligent. When you start school, we're all equal. Then slowly, you struggle. Things are difficult. Other people get ahead. Then you get put in the bottom sets. Then they get more opportunities and you get opportunities. The gap between achieving and underachiever gets further apart. If you weren't already at a disadvantage, you definitely will be by the time you finish the educational establishment. The trick is, can you hold on to your self-esteem long enough? By the time you finish school, you go off in your own direction and succeed. Or have you burnt out to the point where you just do not care anymore? And that seems to be one of the biggest issues with the neurodiverse people we support. Dyslexia doesn't go away in adulthood. It's there your entire life. If you don't learn to read, you'll never be successful. People would say there's a set way of reading or learning or spelling. These things are essential. If you're struggling and want to give up, there are alternative ways of doing things. For example, I can read, but I am a slow reader. I use audiobooks. You might say that's not reading, but I disagree. I know the story back to front, all the language, the terminology. I know just as much as anyone else. I just happen to read it in an alternative way. It took 2 years to get into university after leaving college because the way I learn didn't meet the entry-level requirements. What have you succeeded at? Not despite of your dyslexia, but because of it. And if you do not have dyslexia, what is some examples of someone who has gone above and beyond, not despite it, but because of it? It doesn't have to be the sole reason, but it might be something which aided in that success. Jessica says, I'm a big fan of speeding up my books. I cannot listen to YouTube videos with it being on a fast setting because I just don't find it as engaging. But I get through so much stuff. Nice, really great. Gaining my level 7 PGCE, congratulations. I'm good with people, passionate and kindness. That is a skill which people don't often mention. Problem solving, love it. Started my business, congratulations. Getting my uni degree, good at maths, patience, neurodiversity advocacy. Seeing a physical solution to a problem that people have been researching for months. We need people like us. We need people of all sorts on the spectrum from all different ways of thinking. Have you tried using a spell checker? Of course I've used a spell checker. The thing which people do not realise is they're only good if you know how to spell the word relatively well. Some words I am far off that it doesn't stand a hope in understanding. People say, have you used Grammarly? I love Grammarly, but it still isn't perfect. A lot of the mistakes that you currently do are ingrained in your brain. Do you know how demotivating it is to see that little red line under everything you write? Did you mean? Did you mean? Yes, no. It's soul destroying sometimes. People will always comment on your work. Can you just spend a bit more time? And I'm like, I've got spell check. I've got Grammarly. I can't run any more computer softwares. At Exceptional Individuals, we use a software called Global Autocorrect, which automatically corrects the spelling as you go. Elaine says, my grammar seems to be the thing. Had to give up learning Gaelic. I've tried to learn French, Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, and I have failed at all of them. I like Grammarly, but it's not 100%. Living with dyslexia is like living with trauma. People often say you're cheating by using audiobooks or using spell checkers or this assistive technology. Have you ever been told that your coping mechanisms, your alternative ways of solving problems, is not the correct way due to your dyslexia? This normally comes from someone who is neurotypical, who doesn't like the way you're doing things because you found a different way of achieving results. Having notes provided. In exams, I would have someone reading my exam questions to me, and people say, oh, that's cheating. Trust me, they were not giving me the answers. Longer to take a test. Yes, extra time is another classic. It's not cheating, because the way my brain processes, if I was given the same amount of time as you, I would be probably on benefits my entire life, because I would be completely unemployable. Is that really cheating the system if I do not want that outcome? Some people say listening to a book is not reading. Why is that the hill you want to die on? In the 80s, my brother's primary teacher wouldn't let him wear blue tinted glasses in class because they were considered sunglasses. I got my accommodation, if you can call them, ignored or revoked as my placement. He seemed to think it was a perk, not something to even the playing field. It's just knowing that sometimes these little things that you might not think of, hey, do you mind taking those blue glasses off? Or can you actually try reading the book rather than listening? It might not mean much harm, but the effects that can happen on an individual does result in lower self-esteem. You don't look like you have a disability. What am I meant to look like? I've got glasses. That doesn't mean I'm dyslexic. We assume that people with dyslexia all look like hillbillies. No, you really can't tell the difference. If you are dyslexic, I just want you to describe, what do you look like? Do you have blonde hair, brown hair? Just what do you look like? My guess would be it comes down to confidence. People can sense if you're confident or not. Maybe it's that. To my knowledge, there's no dyslexic sixth sense, but if you think differently, naturally your mannerisms are going to be a little different. Maybe people can pick up on it. But Jessica says sometimes people are just mean. Not a great answer, but haters are gonna hate. Okay, Helena says only 8% of disabled people use a wheelchair, and yet it's the only way people think of disability. It's true. This image here is offensive. The image came from a police sketch. I think a lot of the time we just associate a certain type of look. In terms of what you look at, people with blue eyes, brunette, green eyes, brown hair, tall, short, petite, blonde, hazel, it looks like an adult, tall, but you really can't tell. You shouldn't ever assume. Just because someone doesn't look dyslexic doesn't mean that they don't need help. Or just because someone looks disabled doesn't mean that they're incapable of doing something. It really does work both ways. Have anyone ever gone up to you and when you told them you're dyslexic, did they ask, what happened? Did your mum smoke when she was pregnant? Did you get dropped on the head? Did you sniff glue? Did you do drugs too much when you were younger? What happened? Are your parents related? Have you ever been asked any of these ridiculous questions to try to why you are the way you are, to be a conversation starter? It's just people being a bit ignorant, and sometimes that curiosity can come off offensive. Maybe not in a massive dose, but if it happens to you time and time again, it is going to have a knock-on effect. I've not had that experience, thankfully. People have always asked me why I'm dyslexic. I don't know. Scientifically, I know why, but I don't know why. What have people thought was the cause of your dyslexia? With autism, people love saying, oh, I bet you had an injection, or you did LSD. There's always lots of reasons why you had something. Karen says, as a tutor, I am delighted when people explain that they are dyslexic, but I can then ask them what would support their learning. We've also got watching too much TV or sitting too close. Yeah, that's a great one. I told you, if you watch too many cartoons, you're going to end up dyslexic, or you're not reading enough books. They use the word dyslexic and low intelligence interchangeably. Anything which would result in you not learning effectively results in dyslexia. Being lazy, if you don't get off your bum, being stupid, everyone's dyslexic. Supposedly, didn't pay attention in school, just want a label, or you were lazy at school, you needed extra time. Just because they allowed me to get a Mac because I was doing television production and I had to use the Mac for the course and the equipment needed. It wasn't a luxury, but then people just assume I was exploiting a system. Okay, entitled. Next, I would never think you had a learning disability. Now this one is a bit different from you look. I didn't think you don't look disabled. It's just someone who's known you for a couple of hours or a week and it crops up in conversation. I'm dyslexic. No. And that's because people have this idea that all dyslexics are struggling. Every dyslexic sees the world moving around when they're trying to read. Yet, some people can be dyslexic and be successful. Not just some people, a lot of people. There's countless examples of people who say it. I know it was earlier we mentioned about people telling you not to mention you're dyslexic. But also, if you don't want to mention it, you don't have to. Not everyone needs to fly the flag and be an advocate for it. Sometimes it's okay just to be. Jessica said, some of the worst things come up when people think they are helping or think they are being nice. It's not a compliment. People sometimes use it as a compliment. It shocked the hell out of me. Thanks. Many actors, singers, and dancers are dyslexic. I know this as I trained as one, and many in this industry and many others. We are great with telling stories with our voices and body. We used to work in a studio space. There was lots of actors and amazing storytellers. But I promise you, telling someone you never thought or never would have guessed they're dyslexic is not a compliment. Essentially, you're reinforcing that it's a negative that they've managed to overcome. It's not. Who does not have a learning disability out of these classic celebrities? Keira Knightley, Richard Branson, Whoopi Goldberg, Steven Spielberg, Keanu Reeves. Now, for those of you who are in the neurodiversity space, these celebrities crop up time and time again. Keira Knightley, what is your first thought? Amazing actor. Richard Branson, great entrepreneur. Whoopi Goldberg, really funny. Steven Spielberg, incredibly talented director. Keanu Reeves, Matrix, or whatever. But dyslexia isn't the first thing you think of. When you're told about them, you're surprised. But should you be? Because dyslexia does normally result in being a great storyteller. It does normally have added creativity. You normally do become a really good problem solver or someone who can think outside of the box. When we find people are really successful and they say they're dyslexic, maybe we shouldn't be surprised. Brilliant. My next one on the list is, whenever I'm teaching neurodiverse, I'm always teaching dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, and ADHD because they're the most common ones. And people are never bothered about dyslexia. I know that one. Let's focus on autism. What I say to people is, yes, autism is a really complex condition, but do not take for granted that you think you know dyslexia. It's one that needs more education than any of the others. That wrong understanding has negative consequences. For me, That's why dyslexia is something we shouldn't take for granted. We always talk about how autism is unique, but doesn't that apply to all of the neurodivergences? I would argue yes. Many dyslexics master literacy skills completely. If you just find something difficult in life, you'll go above and beyond to overcome it. I struggle with reading and writing. I do it all the time because I love solving problems. Best way to learn about dyslexia is to ask a dyslexic. Yeah, and if I could edit that a bit, I'd say dyslexics, because we're all different. People have no idea how complex all neurodiversity conditions are and how much they truly affect beyond the one or two traits that people think they are. It's true, if you Google traits or characteristics of dyslexia, you'll get a short list, but it's nuanced. It affects much of your life. It may not be the one thing that changes your entire life, but it is going to have a knock-on effect. And enough of those effects equal a very different character. You can't whittle it down to a couple of tick boxes. When you tell them you're ADHD but not hyperactive, then I think I have the dyspraxia as well. That's why I feel such an outsider in the education system. A lot of people who are neurodivergent have co-occurring conditions or comorbidity. If you have one and another one, sometimes one can cancel out the other, or one can exacerbate the other. Say you're looking for the traits of dyslexia, but you also have ADHD, suddenly you're looking at a very different kettle of fish. Sensory and emotional regulation can also occur with dyslexia. A lot of the time we're misdiagnosed, underdiagnosed, or just have a lack of understanding. Even with doctors and professionals, we do not completely understand how neurodiversity works. Just because someone or a doctor says one thing doesn't mean it's true. My next question to you is, what does it mean to be dyslexic? Either for yourself or just your opinion. What does it mean to be dyslexic? Being different, unique. We're all unique. Lane says, dyslexia halted my career. I had dyslexia and didn't get through any other interviews since I am seen as a troublemaker with my alternative views. Oh, you're radical. Back here we've got overcoming, finding it hard to read, not knowing directions, being different, can't organise, working a bit harder. As you can see, dyslexia means something different to every single person. Because with this answer, it's a word cloud. If you answer the same thing, the words get bigger, and that's how you know how common something is. Every single answer is unique. We've not had a single duplicate yet. If that doesn't tell you how diverse dyslexia is, nothing will. Cad says working super hard. Yes. Danny says for years it meant that I was a burden on my family, country and human race. However, it is a cornerstone of my future career as an actor/storyteller. This will help me in a storytelling course at Edmondson College next year. My next one I'm talking about is, are you sure you're not just using this as a crutch? And what do I mean by this? People often assume it's just, oh, okay, everyone's picking up the D card. Every time I can't do something, oh, I'm dyslexic. It really does affect too many elements of my life. Kaz says, when I went on an awareness session at work and the tutor explained that it's just seeing the world in a different way, I found it fascinating. I wish I saw things the way the tutor did. Has anyone ever told you that dyslexia is not real? There are people out there that you found a secret way of scamming the system. Penny says dyslexia is not an add-on, it is a whole person. That's why for me personally, I prefer to say I'm dyslexic rather than a person with dyslexia. Because for me, it's not an add-on. It's part of who I am. Man, people always love throwing this at me. It is fair. If you understood how difficult it is, you'd understand. Last one is, I can help you overcome this. This refers to the fact that there are amazing people out there who really want to help us, but stop trying to be our saviour. You're not Muhammad. Stop trying to be the one who saves us, because we don't need saving. We need support. We need people to believe in us. This isn't something which you need to fight a battle for us. We don't want to not be dyslexic. Most of us do not. Do not talk to us as if this needs to be overcome, that you're doing us a favour. We all need support in life, whether you're dyslexic or not. And Anya says, we know more about our own condition than anyone. And that is true. Remember, labels are just labels. We are all on a big old spectrum, and sometimes we like little bits out and squiggle a name on it. But we flow, we're not black and white. There isn't a cure you can provide or treatment. I haven't heard of drinking special tea as the answer, but it might be healthy for you. We've learned today that a lot of us love reading. Just because you're dyslexic doesn't mean you automatically hate reading. Rather than saying, you don't have to read this, ask us. I'm not being lazy. It's just my brain can't learn in the way that you're providing the information. Oh, I'm a bit dyslexic too. No, you can't use that. Just because you find reading and spelling hard doesn't mean you're dyslexic too. You're not a little bit OCD. You're not somewhere on the spectrum. It's offensive. Stop using the D card. Eventually it does hurt. Once or twice it's a bit funny, but again and again for years and years, it does hurt. We do not grow out of dyslexia. We learn to mask. We learn coping mechanisms. We learn ways to navigate the world. But it still is an extra strain, like chipping away at you bit by bit. And this is why burnout happens. Penny says, labels help to get support in society. My mum was told she's not dyslexic, she's bilingual. Helen says, people assume I'm bad at spelling, biggest challenge. Definitely not the idea people have of dyslexia. People don't often assume memory challenges with dyslexia, but yet the vast majority of dyslexics that we work with have challenges with memory. All right, everyone, I am going to leave because I'm talking for a while, but thank you so much for attending.